Almighty God, you have blessed us with reason, memory, and skill. Help us to use them wisely in our service to our town government. We ask thee in thy holy name. Amen. Salute the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address us in public forum? Celine, I'm sure you might have something for us.
A couple things. We're having an auction of county properties on June 21st at Clinton Community College at 11 o'clock. There are 30 parcels going up for sale. 2 are from in Champlain and 1 in Moores. Last time I said sales tax was so-so. Well, it's really picked up. We're above projections, so we're doing well. So people are still spending, and we got money. But don't spend it all in one spot. Our jail completion is on target at the end of May. We have about 30 federal prisoners right now, but the jail is full. In fact, we had to board 9 prisoners out. And here we have a new prison with 200 and some beds. So, airport terminal, we expect a completion date of next January, February. And we're actively pursuing airlines, and there's some stuff out there that might happen. The county might do is planning some road work to finish up in the town of Champlain. Church and South Street, this little bit of county, is that where they're planning to do that. I also brought you your county directories, so if you want to pass them down. And give the extra ones to Jane.
Okay.
Yep.
Does anyone else wish to address the board at this time? It's been my pleasure. I've asked Jules Trahan to make a presentation for us. Jules?
It's my pleasure tonight to have a presentation for Mr. Ralph Gilpin. I'd like to have Ralph come up here. Ask all the town board and supervisor voting unanimously to have Ralph have the meeting room in his honor. And we have a plaque here for Ralph, for the dedicated service he's had for over 30 years plus. I've worked with him for 50 years, so I've known him for quite a while here. And tonight I want to present this plaque. This room is a name in honor of Ralph R. Gilpin in recognition of his outstanding service to the town of Champlain, 2005. County legislator is here tonight, so
Thank you.
she's worked with Ralph quite a bit too.
Well, I'm not as old as Jules, so I can't say I've worked with Ralph for 50 years. But I have worked with Ralph for a great number of years, and I can tell you that, they say you make a living by what you do, but you make a life by what you give. Certainly Ralph has exemplified that. This is a man who you could always count on when you came to the office here. I remember looking at plans for Miramar. We were looking at the drain basins way back. Ralph was always there, very knowledgeable, ready to give good advice, and never imposing. So I do want to thank you on behalf of all our citizens for what you have done for us. Thank you.
It's really quite an honor. It's an honor that I find it difficult to believe that I'm deserving of it. But I guess I should like to thank a few of the people that got me here along the way. First is Larry Brockett. He appointed me license clerk in 1959. Without this appointment, I would never have been asked to be appointed as town clerk in 1974. I'd then like to thank Leo Letourneau and Jim Daly, who was instrumental in my being appointed town clerk by that town board in 1974. I would like to thank all of the voters in the town of Champlain who re-elected me for the next 31 years. This alone was an honor which I appreciate far more than I can express in words. I would like to thank the town boards who I've had the pleasure of serving during these years. respect and cooperation they have given me will never be forgotten. I'd like to thank all of the office employees, particularly Jane West, who has worked with me through the years, conquering many problems. I would like to thank my wife Teresa and my children for their love and support and understanding when the town interfered with our family plans. And I would like to thank the town boards of last year and this year for this plaque and presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph. I need a motion to approve the minutes of April 11th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of April 11th.
Is there any questions on the minutes of April 11th? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. In your packet this evening, you have your zone, code officer's report. If you're home, you have the minutes of your zoning board and planning board meetings of March 16th, March 2nd. We have a letter from our dog catcher updating us on the first quarter of this year. Very interesting, worth reading. Just a reminder that the real property office here is open on Fridays. It will also be open for this month only, though. Every Friday. It will also be open May 17th, which is a Wednesday, from 6 to 8. Saturday, May 20th, from 1 to 5. And Tuesday, May 23rd, from 9 to 5. That's for grievance procedures. Information only, if anybody needs those, give us a call, give them to me. We have a contract drawn up. We had to contract with the county for our assessment services. We disapproved this evening. I could have a motion.
We make a motion to accept this contract.
Okay.
I'll second.
Is there any questions on the contract? If not, a roll call vote. Craig?
Yes.
John Paul?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Jules?
Yes.
And yes for myself. It's a contract to do our assessing. We have the CCOR later this evening. We're going to do right after the meeting here. Dennis Rich's application. We need to set a date for a public hearing in June for a local law pertaining to sewer rates that the village charges for our outside users. I ran this by the town attorney. I'm recommending that we do it at our next meeting, which is June 13th. We need to set a time on that. Is 7:30 okay with everybody here? Any problem with that? Okay. I don't believe we need a motion or vote on that, do we? Just set the hearing. This is to adjust the sewer rates and water rates that the village is charging the town residents. We have to have a public hearing. Okay. We have a memo in the packet pertaining to the Champlain Border Summit coming up. We have an announcement from the Price Chopper of a grand opening and the private invitation. The private invitation is this coming Monday, May 15th, from 5:30 to 7. Everybody's invited. There will be a charge at the door, a $5 donation. And they will match that donation and give it to 3 charities in the area. Northeastern School, Rouse's Point, Champlain Kiwanis Club, and Champlain EMS Service. And on Tuesday, the 16th, is the official opening. The ribbon cutting ceremony will take place at the Untitled Chapter. Glad to have them come to town. Some good news from the county. We got our county check in the amount of $37,605 for the mortgage tax distribution. I checked it against last year's and it's up a little over $1,000, so it's on the right direction. It's going up. Alan, you have your superintendent's reports.
Okay, on the Bay Shore Road, the state has given us permission to reduce it from 55 to 35. That's, Julie will be getting that in the mail. And then I got a report of the chips. We have almost 10,900. We almost had $10,000 more, 9,700 some odd dollars more in chip money that was given to us by the state, more than last year. And I got a thing here for the Grand U bed and breakfast. I don't know what's gonna happen there, but we got a bill that we gotta pay, but I feel that the guy is 5 feet too close to the road. And he claimed that we damaged his sign by the snowplow.
Okay.
So I leave it up to the board. If they wanna pay it in full, or pay half the bill or what.
Okay.
And we did get our new truck today, and it's in the back. Anybody that's interested, you know, let me know. I'll start it or open the door for you after. That's what all I gotta do.
Okay, I sat in a new truck and it's a beauty. Came in around 1:30, 2 o'clock this afternoon. Pertaining to that sign, we got a bill for a sign that was damaged. I had Alan check it, went down and measured it. It was 50-foot right-of-way road. It was right at the 25 foot from the center of the road. The zoning law says he needs to be 5 foot back from the right-of-way, if I'm correct. So his sign was actually really too close to the road. We do have, it's a county road. We did call the county on it. They recommended it in the past where they've had problems like this. They paid half the bill, not all the bill, and sent a letter stating that the sign is too close to the road, and we will not pay them for the damages to these signs. This sign. When we come up pay the bills, we will have to act on that. Okay.
We also want them to move the sign, if their sign is in compliance with the law required as well.
Okay. We'll send a letter to that effect, that the sign is too close to the road and needs to move back at least 5 foot. We can do that, but.
Just so it doesn't happen again, so we can have letters in the future for this person.
Right. Jules and Bruce, Building Committee. Yeah, report.
The building committee, we are now waiting for the vents at the top. So as soon as we get those on the back, we got a little more work to do on the back. And we haven't fully decided how we're going to that front yet, because we're still waiting for a price on that concrete.
Okay.
And if that's going to be a problem, we might go metal. I don't know. It's up in the air right now.
Okay. We put a lot of new siding on the end of the building, on the back side of the building.
But the bulk of the work is finished.
Yes.
Except a little bit in the back, and a little bit fixed up.
Okay.
And we're waiting for those roof.
That's,
And they have to be put in.
Then
We don't have enough air up there.
ventilate the attic. Okay. Anything else?
That's all I'm doing.
Grants Committee, John Paul and Craig, I don't.
Everything's all tied in.
Okay, Board of Assessment Review. There was a training class, going by memory, I think it was the 16th of April, was it? Just 26th, okay. That day, I got a call that somebody had resigned off the board. way too late that day to appoint somebody else, but I found another person to fill in. I spoke to Jim Gagnon. They'll update them as far as that class goes, and we'll get this guy aboard. We really need a full board the end of this month, or is it 23rd or something. I recommended, I spoke to some of the board members, maybe not all. John Trombley lives right here on Route 9 and runs the metal fabrication place in the old Kintex building. He stopped to visit with me and Jim Gagnon also, and he's agreed to take it if appointed. I need to be better of the board on that.
I make a motion that we appoint him.
Second.
Any questions? I think I will take a roll call on this one too, then, just for permission. Craig?
Yes.
John?
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yes.
Jules?
Yes.
Yes. You will inform him, Julie?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The Highway Committee. Jules and John Paul?
Yes. We, last week, we took a tour of the town roads with Alan. We haven't come up with the exact years that some of these are gonna get done. But one reason is that some of these roads we have to remeasure, because the measurements were from one end to the other, and some of them had been done. So we're gonna get those measurements out to know exactly where we're at. And Alan has already put into where he wants to do this year. And what we're working on now is for 207, 208,
Okay.
so that he will know what he has to do to get ready for it. Good way to get him out of it. So we did that last week. And the other question I have right now is, have you booked for golf course road yet? Well, it doesn't look too good for the rest of this week.
It started this summer though,
We're
right?
gonna get ahold of the county here, know when they're gonna be available to get part of this done.
I got all the materials to fill it.
That stuff dry out pretty good.
Yeah. Just the idea of getting the right weather to get in there.
If we have a wet spring, we might have problems there going in and going out. It's gonna be the bad part. Other than that, should be able to do it. All right, we wanna do, if we get half of it done this spring, we'll be lucky. And we'll do the other half next fall. It's already been fall.
Okay,
Is it gonna hold
We
up
don't wanna go
traffic?
there in the middle of the
People gonna be
season.
able to-
I understand.
When we
We
don't,
gotta work on the ends.
Flagman.
We have scheduled, if I'm correct, Alan, to do the Southwick Road and part of the Creek Road. Is that correct?
Yep.
Approximately almost 3 miles,
Yeah, about 3.1.
3.1 miles. That's scheduled for this year. Probably late July, August, we're hoping that time frame. That's,
How many miles?
I think you said 3.1?
3.1.
He's also waiting for prices on that, too, also
Like the tar.
the blacktop is.
We expect it's gonna be up, we don't know how much. Okay, the Water and Sewer Committee. John Paul, Craig, and Mike, take it. And I'll do this, and-
I'll let Mickey go first on South Street.
okay?
Okay, in the water and sewer, the hydrants have been repaired. The one in front of the DOT building and then the other one on the Webb Dubois Road. Those are back in operation now. We are gonna send a letter to the DOT requesting that no one uses those hydrants other than coming through the town. If they need water, we have dry hydrants around they can use. I gave you a copy of a contract that the attorney, Mr. Favreau, sent us for an outside user agreement. And these contracts are specific to anybody that's an outside user outside of a district. And this one here was for this American S-Bomb company on the Webb Dubois Road. And in there's some wording as far as district tax and all that, but we don't use any of that here, so that part of that contract would be deleted if this is approved by the board. But he had in there a one-time hookup fee because it's in the Miramar district line of $1,500, and then the $500 tapping fee, which is $2,000 for it, is what this person would pay to tap into that line. Now, the gentleman from American S-Bomb came to see me this week about that, and he's in agreement with that. He has no problems with it, or what the water rate would be. And he asked that, if it's acceptable to the board, that you approve that agreement with him tonight, because he'd like to to start getting this done.
Okay, so the contract needs to read that he'll pay $1,500 plus the $500.
The $1,500 is in there, the $500, I explained to him what that was, and he's in agreement with that, as well as whatever the current water charge would be from the village.
The user fee, yes.
Right, now you have the option of raising or lowering the fee depending on, it's an outside user agreement, you can do whatever you want. But we more or less talked about this, and I guess the rate would be what we're being charged now, plus the service charge. You're not talking about a big user here, so I seriously doubt he uses 1,000 gallons of water in 3 months, so it's gonna take a while before his meter starts to read any usage. He'll just pay a user, a service fee until he gets over the 1,000 gallon limit, or quota, I should say.
The $1,500 was linked to that.
Yes, that's
That district.
to go towards the debt retirement. It's a one-time lump sum fee towards the Miramar district. Because he's outside that district, but he's gonna be getting benefit from the transmission pipe that goes by.
The line goes right by the whole road.
Yeah.
If somebody in the future wants to get in, they try to do the same thing.
Right. So, if you could act on that tonight, he would appreciate it. The South Street, as you all know, we have a consent order that we have to respond to. And this consent order is, it's time. Certain things have to happen by certain dates on there. And these dates are all flexible. And we had a call on this from the DEC, and we won't be able to make the June 1st deadline for district formation. The reason for that was the map plan and review, the cost that came down to what these people would be charged for water and sewer and the pay down in the debt made that project totally, unaffordable for those people. So what we've done is talk to the engineers about alternative programs or alternative systems, sand filters or large septics and whatnot and so forth. And I also talked to the EFC people, and grants are available for this type, which I was surprised. I didn't think it would be any funding available, but they encouraged us to look into this. But by going this route, we have to have the engineers do another map plan and review to whatever alternative plan we're going to use. Because we're not going to be getting village sewer or village water. This is going to be a standalone operation, hopefully. So what I need to know and what we need to do for the DEC is the board willing to spend more money on engineering studies to find out if an alternative plan would work and what the cost would be? And if yes, then we can go forward with that and still continue with the grant process. If not, then we have to back out of that consent order where these people will be left to basically fend for themselves and solve their own problems there. I personally think we owe it to them to do whatever we can to alleviate their problem. These are small lots, it's a small area, but you people control the purse strings here, so.
You haven't contacted any of these companies that do this?
I just talked to the engineer from Bernier Carr, and he was well aware of different types of systems. And, I asked for ballpark figures, and he had some numbers, but it's all, the numbers are very dependent on whether or not we have to have a pump station in there. A pump station for this operation is upwards of $100,000 with the generator and the pump. Why it's so much money is beyond me, but I'm not an engineer. So if we can get away from a pump station, if we could have a gravity-fed system, you can really cut the cost of this program or this project down. So they need to look at that to see what they can come up with.
I've lost track of some of these companies that, we have talked to some of them 10, 12 years ago here because they want to do that in Miramar.
Yeah.
Sometime, but I don't know if we could dig up these companies. I could, through the association of towns, dig them out.
Yeah.
And if they came up here, they would tell you roughly what you need. Then you could have your engineers check them out afterwards.
Right.
Hired engineers to check this all out. You're spending all the money here, you probably do nothing. The company will tell you
Yeah,
the approximate cost of this, if you need a pump station, or where you can put this thing.
the engineer did tell me that there are companies that provide like package systems for this
Right.
type of stuff, and all the engineering comes with it. We didn't get into names and costs and stuff like that because I didn't know how far the board wants to go with this. But those are the options that are out there. I mean, we don't have to spend money right now, but we do have to send that letter back to the DEC, and I was gonna put August 1st as a date that we would either form a district or get out of the project. And that gives us roughly 2 months to work on this, which I feel is plenty of time to get an answer what this is gonna cost. I mean, most of the engineering is done on this, it's just, instead of it going to the village, now it's gonna be a standalone operation.
Let me look up for a number there for you.
Okay.
Well, I know one of those guys in that business there.
Okay.
We know that he about to give you a ballpark figure here, and it's right there if it's feasible or not.
Right,
If it's not feasible, you can quit right away.
yeah, exactly, well, that's what we need to know, because we, with that consent order, we can't keep dragging it, that's the big problem.
But if it is feasible, we need some direction from the board how much to go ahead with the engineering study, am I correct?
Right,
Yeah, but if you talk to one of these outfits, it's not gonna cost you nothing to talk to them.
But they don't do the engineering part.
Yeah, but they're gonna tell you approximately how this thing's gonna work.
Yes.
Yes or no? If it's no, then you forget about it.
If it's
If it's
yes,
yes, then we'll have to talk to our engineer to see if this is gonna be feasible.
okay.
But they're gonna tell you if it's feasible or not, but we want our engineers to look at it. But why get them to look at it if we don't have anything to look at it yet?
Should we have some direction for the board to spend some money if we need to before June meeting?
well, that's up to you people,
I mean, I just don't wanna, I totally understand where you're coming from.
They would probably tell you roughly the engineering fees would be in this anyway,
yeah.
before we can make any decision.
We need to get on that.
But in the
But
past,
look at
they've
something we
always,
know nothing about it.
in the past, they've always given us like an open-ended contract not to exceed, I think $3,500 in some of these reports. I think one of them was $5,000 at one time. And I don't know that they actually cost that much money, but I do know, I would be real surprised if they're not gonna charge us something if they do some research for us.
But they know that our engineers already been in this thing, partly, right?
Yes. They have, they have the whole map plan and report done for South Street. All they would have to do would be to modify that to whatever system we put in and just redo the numbers, but the majority of the background work is all done.
Done now already.
The income survey, that's another thing that we sent out all those forms, and hopefully these people will respond to those. I think there's 4 or 5 questions on there. It goes back to RCAP Solutions, which is a nonprofit organization, and they tally up and summarize the income survey. And so it's a nonpartisan type thing apparently. And they would get back to the town how we would score on grant funding for this based on that. So that's being done now. So that was another thing that had to be done.
By middle of this summer, August, by the latest, we need to make a decision.
Well, by August 1st.
We're not gonna go forth with this project. DEC needs to know that. They can notify those residents that are on their own, so to speak. You'll have to put individual systems in. Okay. You need to either act on it or walk away from it, get away from it.
Right.
Anything else?
Yeah, you talked about the water and sewer rates, the resolution that you need to adjust your sewer rate every time there's an increase rather than a local law. I believe you mentioned that earlier, right?
I said
At the public hearing? Okay.
Public hearing in June. I will be advertising in the paper.
The only other thing is, I have a request in, there's 2 meetings coming up for code enforcement people. One of them is May 16th, and it's for codes updates. And this is a state mandated course that we have to take because they're changing the way permits and information is going to be gathered, stored, and used. And by 2007, I believe there has to be a new local law that's going to reflect all this stuff. So they want us to know about all this. So I've asked for that. And then on May 18th, there's our local organization has a meeting once every 3-4 months, and this one's in Constable. And there's going to be a DEC forest ranger there, and he's going to speak on fires, brush fires, and what to do and how to handle them, and the problems with them. I mean, every spring, we just went through this dry season with brush fires with the fire department, so I'd like the okay to attend both those meetings. And other than that, I believe that's all I have.
Greg, you have something?
Yes, last week's meeting with Shared Services, Janet Kennedy from Lakes to Locks was there. She was a guest. And at this meeting, we talked about a 3-part venture with the village of Rouse's Point and village of Champlain. Rouse's Point already has a plan in motion. Lakes to Locks are just, they're just facilitators in helping getting the grant money and to make sure no one is left out. The village of Champlain is currently working on their River Park boat ramp, and that's due to be completed in June. And it was discussed that the town's best interest in this three-part venture is to explore dredging the river right at the mouth. And I understand it's been about 20 years since it's been done. Any ideas from the public is welcome. Let me know if you have any ideas. And I've been checking with the marina owners. So far, I've contacted Andy West along Lakeshore area, and he's totally in favor of it. So, we need to make sure that the marina owners are in favor as well, which I don't really see why they wouldn't be. And the other thing that came up, and this would be under Parks and Recreation, is the Champlain Elementary School was also discussed. Is the town interested in a joint venture with the village of Champlain in purchasing Champlain Elementary? I was told that within the past couple of years, just off of Route 11, the town had explored looking into putting a park in, dependent on grants. The village of Champlain is looking into getting first option on the property. Steve Southwick and Greg Martin both reported on this at last night's village board meeting. And the idea behind this is to come up with a study and ensure that it's self-sustaining and no extra cost to the taxpayers. So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Before we go on with committee reports, I'd like to act on three things, or two things. The code meeting permission for Mike and Julie on this. Julie needs to go to this one also on the 16th. And I believe Mike, I don't believe Julie would be going to the one for the fire, will you? I remember it. Okay. So I need a motion to approve Mike and Julie for the 16th and Mike on the
18th.
18th.
I'll make that motion that they be allowed to attend these seminars.
Is there any questions on this? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now we need a motion to approve or disapprove of the S-bound hookup on the water on the Duval Road. The one Mickey spoke about, $1,500 hookup fee plus the $500, well, I guess the $1,500 wouldn't be called the hookup fee, it would be called,
It's a one-time lump sum towards the debt
it's
retirement.
kind of like a buy-in.
Yes,
He's buying into the district. The $500 is for the hookup.
yes.
Okay. If you desire the board, I need a motion to approve that.
I make a motion to approve that hookup.
Okay? Do I have a motion in a second? Is there any questions on this? I'll take a roll call vote on this one. Craig?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Jules?
Yes.
And yes for myself. Please notify them. I wrote down the South Street, but there'll be no action taken on that until we look into different contractors. Landfill Committee, John Paul and Jules.
We were out there a week ago for our spring inspection tour, and everything as a whole is all right, but we have to, we have three stoned areas that should be covered. And you see one of these covered over a period of time, and I think the time is here. I'll have to get in touch with Alan and show him exactly what it's all about. Nothing more than putting some of the stones in the membrane and then the dirt and seed. And we still have a few trees to cut, which is probably should have to be cut before long on the north side, on the west side. Somebody went in there, did some chipping work, and I'm afraid these trees, Alan tried to get them out of there, but it was too soft. And we'll probably have to cut those down before they fall on the fence. And everything's all right up there, except for a few minor little twig pulling deals that, I'll get with Alan on that. That's all we found out there. Yeah, we're monitoring it this spring sometime, water testing.
Yes, we do it once a year.
It's about this time of year.
Okay,
That's it.
okay. Julie,
Yeah,
town clerk's report.
there's a town clerks association meeting tomorrow in Plattsburgh, and I'd just like permission to attend it.
Need a motion on that? If so, I'll entertain a motion, I have no problem with
Make a motion to go.
it. Motion and a second, all those in favor? Opposed? Good luck. Anything else?
Nope, that's all I have.
One other thing I got in today's newspaper, you noticed there was a brochure in there from Clinton Community College. In the June 9th, there's a course for notary public. We need a notary in this building, we do not have one. Is it the desire of the board that we send somebody to training for this, or how should we?
Send more than one.
More than one. I have no problem with that either. It's a $95 expense,
Yeah, but we don't have anybody right now,
that's true,
and we should have.
yes. I will entertain a motion to send up to 2,
I would say two,
if possible, to get 2.
possible two
Okay.
girls.
That's a motion?
And I'm making a motion to send two girls.
Second.
Who seconded it? Is there any questions on this? This is June 9th, I'll do my best to get 2 to go. If no questions, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I need a motion to approve the monthly bills.
I have a question on one of the bills, number 1207, Rushford Trucking. They did work for us, I understand, 2 years ago, and they're charging us something because they didn't fulfill a state requirement. They paid certain salary levels to their men, and I don't think we're responsible for that bill. It's a contractor's mistake. It's his problem. We signed off on it. We paid whatever we owed or he billed in good faith. I don't think we should pay it.
Understand? And look, we should have, if you're making a motion to pay the bill, we should also address that other one, about this road sign. It's also in there. Do you have a number on that one? Is there a?
I don't have a number on that one, but
It's there.
the road sign was sitting there for years and we didn't notice it. So I think paying half the bill is very, yeah, I have the number. It's 1210 for the
110?
bed and breakfast.
Okay.
But the sign was in violation, nobody noticed it for years. And if our plow knocked it down, it's both our fault. I think by sharing the bill, it's a very reasonable solution.
Okay, and on the Rushford bill, are we just gonna table that for now and put it up for discussion later on, or are we?
Just for further consideration, I do have an opinion from our town attorney on that one. It was not to pay the bill.
I would like to research this thing out here and leave it open.
Okay, that's fine. I assume the motion that you made, Bruce, is to pay the bills?
I make a motion to pay the bills,
Withdrawing
withdrawing the
1207?
Rushford bill and cutting in half the bill for the bed and breakfast.
I need a
Are
second.
you withdrawing this Rushford bill for further information?
Yes.
I need a motion, then I'll ask the question if there's any,
Well, you've done
I
my
need a
motion.
second.
You need a second.
I need a
I'll
second.
second.
I have a second. Now, is there any discussion on either one of those bills?
I don't see why we have to research the Rushford bill, and we talked
I want to research it,
for weeks.
period.
If somebody wants to research it, that's fine, but not paying, we're not approving the payment tonight,
Right.
okay? We have legal advice not to pay. I have no problem with somebody looking into it. I have no problem with that.
I don't see it changing.
I don't see it changing anything, but I have no problem with looking into it. I need a roll call vote if there's no other questions on the bills. Craig?
Yes.
John? Bruce?
Yes.
Jules?
Yes.
And yes for myself. I need a motion to approve the post audit bills.
I make a motion to pay the post audit bills.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any questions on the post audit bills? If not, I'll ask the roll call vote also. Craig?
Yes.
John?
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yes.
Jules?
Yes.
Yes for myself. You will have reports of your revenue reports and your expense reports, and your trial balances are in your packet tonight. I have nothing other than the Secor work tonight. Do we need to do that in a public session or after the meeting? In the public session. Is there anything else to bring before the board other than the Secor application? If not, that's where we started.
First of all, I know Mr. Richards here. Dennis, do you expect any of your representatives to be here this evening?
At least one.
Okay, do you know what time they're
It's only
planning to be?
7:15, 7:30. He's at a town Plattsburgh meeting.
Okay, no, that's what I recall from the last meeting. I
Right.
just didn't know where that could have, if you had spoken with either Mr. Madonna or Mr. Terry about
He
that.
spoke to me today. He said he'd be here around 7:15, 7:30.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, and if it's okay with the board, do you want to wait a few minutes before we begin doing
Sure.
this, or it's up to you?
Take a break for 10, 15 minutes. Is Ralph still here? We can all congratulate Ralph. We're ready to have a break. No, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn. We can just pause it. Thank you for all waiting and being patient. We have in front of us Dennis Richards, part one, I believe it is. He had to fill it out. We have that. We have to do part two this evening. Should we review part one or just?
Yeah, well, first of all, yes.
Yes.
And I think, and I'm not saying we need to review it line item by line item, but in talking to Julie and Craig briefly during the break, my understanding that everyone received a copy of the part one project information, which was completed by Mr. Richards and signed by him on the last page. And essentially, part one, just essentially informational for us. It gives us some details about, the scope of the project that Mr. Richards is proposing. Indicates certain aspects of the property itself. It talks about, obviously the wetlands that we discussed at our March meeting. Again, the size of the project, dimensions, are there wells proposed, is there septics, what kind of waste is going to be dealt with there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, unless the board had any specific questions of Mr. Richard regarding part one, I'd propose to move on to discussing part two, which is our responsibility to complete.
I do have a question on part one.
Yes?
Page 5, number 17. Is the site served by existing public utilities? They put no. Must have.
You're asking about the new site or the old site?
I'm asking about the form that you filled out.
It sounds like you're asking if there's going to be more power there. That's what it kind of sounds like.
It just says, is the site served by existing public utilities? So that's a new site?
The site that's already there has got a nice power.
So you probably should have answered yes.
Probably should have answered yes, because it's really the whole site as compared to, and maybe they were talking about water and sewer. I'm thinking about water and sewer as well. So I can understand, it's a good question, Bruce, and I understand the question.
Also,
So, as far as you're concerned, Dennis, can we amend that to say yes
Yeah.
instead of no then?
Yeah.
I also have question number 8F. Number of off-street parking spaces existing, only 8. It seems very small.
What page is that on?
Same page, page 5, 8, or is it B? It's 20BF. Number of off-street spaces existing. It seems like there's a lot more than 8.
I don't see that.
Is that on page 5 again? What page is that on?
5 of 21. F.
Oh, it's down here.
Right in the middle of the
It's
page.
B, F, right in the middle. So there's about 8 parking spaces there?
Well, there's 8 to 10 for people that pull in. I mean,
And that's all you propose, correct?
for employees and places for people to come and speak to me.
Okay.
Just for information only for those that are here that might want to know this, it involves a 10-acre parcel. Mr. Richards says that 5 acres of it is in agriculture, 1.5 acres is in wetlands, Approximately 2 acres is in roads, buildings, and others. Paved services. The gravel work area is 4.8 acres. I did check out on page 4. It was a question I asked. I think Nikki looked it up for me. Is the site located in an ag district pursuant to the ag and markets law? I thought it would be because all his neighbors are mostly farmers. And I did look on the map, and his particular parcel is not in an ag district. I would have thought it would have been because it was pretty well run for the ag district. I'm not exactly sure how ag districts were set up, but apparently everybody didn't have to get into them. Those that signed up, there was some tax benefits for being in an ag district.
Correct.
So I kind of found that out in my own research.
I also have a question.
Yes,
Page 6, second item, number 6. If single-phase project anticipated period of construction is 0, there's not going to be no construction at all? That is?
Excuse me?
Is there going to be no other further construction of any kind?
Well, at the present time, the way I got it set up is I'm happy with my shop. I don't plan on building anything in the future.
But as far as the approval you're getting tonight, you're looking for tonight, there's no new construction proposed at this time?
No.
I have another question.
yes.
On number 13, if subsurface liquid waste disposal involved, no. So that there's going to be no liquid waste at all from the truck?
No, there's no automobiles, there's no oil coming out of the automobiles, there's no oil, there's no antifreeze. That's not the purpose of the project.
I looked on page 6, number 20. Will the project produce any noise level?
Is it on page 620? Page 625.
On page, okay, I'm sorry. Page 7 of 21 is the one by the bottom.
This is the back.
Number
Correct.
6.
The bottom.
I'm sorry. Page 7, number 20. Will the project produce any operating noise exceeding local ambient noise levels? I don't know what that is. I mean, I really don't know what what determines that. Is that a,
Well, I think it's basically just taking into account what the normal noise levels may be in that general area, and that's going to be. I mean, Dennis, there's no crushing or anything going on with this project, is that correct? That's my understanding.
Exactly.
What would be other than maybe the trucks driving down the road and or emptying or whatever, what would be the loud noise that we would tend to experience with your project?
Just the trucks.
loading or unloading of metal?
That's it.
And I do believe I haven't got the front end, the original request was a time limit of like 7 in the morning till 3:30 or something.
Whatever, some hours of operation, something normal.
On page 9 of 21 now. Number 6. Is the proposed action consistent? Pardon?
I had the same question.
Okay, is the proposed action consistent with the recommended uses and adopted local laws, local use plans? You put yes, I don't believe that to be a 100% true statement.
Well, he needs to get a license to operate, which is what he's doing, so it probably technically should probably be no. It's consistent means to be a zone for use for something as well, and that's not necessarily true.
Yes, it's not zoned for that particular.
I have a question on the previous page, page 8. At the bottom, does the proposed action involve a planning or zoning decision? Isn't that what we're doing? But no?
I would deem it a planning or zoning decision to be coming from the planning board or zoning board. And we're not that. It does require approval, and he indicates that at the very top of page 8, where it says approval is required, and it says town board, yes, town board license.
Does this still have to be approved by the zoning board?
My impression is no, because we deemed it to be pre-existing non-conforming.
Is it, also on page 9 of 21, is the proposed action compatible with adjoining surrounding land use within a quarter mile? He has neighbors much closer than 1/4 mile. It's not compatible with their zoning, their classification. Okay, you get my thinking there? It's-
Yeah, I mean, certainly if this is more in a commercial zone, you would say, obviously it is. So I think the answer to that should be no, Dennis, okay?
On the very last page, 10 of 21, number 12.
I had a question on that too.
Okay. Will the proposed action result in a generation of traffic significantly above the present levels?
What's the definition of significant?
Well-
One truck, 8 trucks?
Well, I think it indicated in the application, did not Dennis, like maybe 1 truck per hour is what you estimate?
Up to moment.
And when you say present levels, I mean right now is present. And right now, I'm assuming that the place is in operation, so it probably isn't any different than it is presently. At least, I mean, I can't answer how he determined how to answer that. I
There's
guess.
not gonna be any more noise in 1 truck an hour, or if there's 8 trucks an hour, they all make the same noise.
How many trucks are there, basically, for the property now, Dennis, per hour?
Some days there's none, some days there might be 1, sometimes there's 2 a day.
Okay. Would you expect it to significantly increase above that level?
No.
And that's basically his answer.
Yeah, I'm assuming that there could be trucks going in here from pickup trucks to tractor trailers. I mean,
Correct.
it could be somebody either bringing the stuff or going and getting the stuff.
Correct.
Yep. But that's what they do now. That's the thing, you know. And again, the question is.
Trucks today, they have going in, we had snowball business.
But again, the question is it going to significantly increase? I mean, if it's 1 or 2 more, is that significant? I mean, that's 50% more, I don't know. Maybe, it's kind of a judgment call. But I think it sounds like that's how he answered that question, was it's probably going to be the same, next week as it is now. Just at present levels.
Those are the questions I marked that I've answered. Does anybody else have any questions in part 1? Dennis's part of the application. You want part 2?
Yep. Again, part 2 is, we had some discussion about part 2 back in March, when we were last here. And what I will do is go through the different items on part 2. And I may not touch on every single item under the examples, okay? We can certainly go over those if there's some question about the specific impacts on certain issues. And if the board has any questions or we need some discussion, we can certainly do that. The first item is impact on land. Will the proposed action result in any physical change to the project site? And that goes under examples. Any construction on slopes of 15% or greater, construction on land with a depth to water table is less than 3 feet, construction of paved parking for 1,000 more vehicles. What's the water table there, Dennis? That was in your application.
It's 52 feet is our wells.
A water table.
The water table, carrying with
Actually, it's on page 3, number 8. It says 3 to 10 feet, so it's not less than 3 feet. So this construction in a designated floodway. Again, all examples of impact on land. So I guess my question to the board under number 1, how does the board feel about that? Will the proposed action result in a physical change to the project site?
Meaning land and building?
Just talks about land. Quite frankly, under the examples under land, it doesn't really talk about buildings. It talks about, excavation, some construction of different aspects of certain items, like a landfill, obviously, is not happening there.
I assume there's no intent to, like, increase the staging area, you might wanna call it, by twice or 3 times its size or something.
It's not my intention. I just want to use the area that I have at the present time.
Quite honestly, I think if that did come about at some point in time, I think he'd have to actually come back to us and apply to expand it in order to see Mickey about that as well.
Question I had. You, gonna chart yours in,
I will chart mine in.
okay.
How does the board feel about number 1?
If he's gonna use what he has, I don't think it's gonna impact land.
Certainly I know those examples didn't seem to. Does the board feel comfortable with saying no with respect to number 1? Yes. Okay.
That's why I asked the question, it's an enlarged staging area.
Under number 2, under impact of land, will there be an effect to any unique or unusual landforms found on the site? And then, for example, they give cliffs, dunes, geological formations, things like that.
I'm not aware of any, I don't think anybody else is.
Yeah, and I think part 1 indicated there is none there. Going to the back page. Excuse me. Impact on water, number 3. Will proposed action affect any water body designated as protected? And it gives developable area of site containing a protected water body, dredging more than 100 cubic yards of material from a channel, extension of utility distribution systems with protected water body, construction in a designated freshwater or tidal wetland, other impacts. Again, we know there's wetlands on the property. Those have been mapped by Neil Carey on the survey map, the last one we received. They are complying with the buffer that's required by DEC from those wetlands. Obviously that's something that he's going to have to comply with.
Does DEC inspect him periodically, yearly, every 2 years, every 6 months?
Dennis, do you receive periodic inspections from DEC?
They were up there a couple of years ago.
Okay. I don't think there's anything that mandates them to have an annual inspection of the use at Dennis. I think the only time that they probably would show up was if they got a complaint from someone indicating that they felt something was going on there or that there was some kind of issue or problem. Then I certainly think they would show up. But I don't believe there's any mandated annual inspection that has to take place.
Will our own code enforcement officer come by and check it out tomorrow?
If that's a condition the board feels is appropriate, we assume that's a condition we can add.
I take it in 3's a no then?
Do we feel comfortable with number 3 being a no?
Can we ask any questions?
Sure.
Doesn't ours go by 500 feet, 700 feet? For the,
That's the DEC buffer though from wetlands.
yeah. But with ours, we have the 500 feet on ours under the zoning. So wouldn't they have to go by what we have for zoning, not that one?
The structures are probably, I'm gonna guess, close to 500 feet from the wetlands. I mean, we're talking about structures. Would that be about right, Mickey, would you agree?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, I'm looking at the survey map,
Yeah.
edge of wetlands, any structures are well in excess of 500 feet from there, I would guess.
If he's not, would he need a waiver?
I'm not so sure you need a waiver because the buildings have been, I don't know how long they've been constructed there, but they've been there for a long time and they may have been there pre-zoning.
I believe so, yes.
If they're pre-zoning, then they're pre-existing and there's nothing we can do about that.
Question?
No, it's a very good question. Will the proposed action affect any non-protected existing or new body of water? That's number 4. Again, I don't believe there's any body of water that, other than, there's some wetlands in the area which we're taking into account, but that would seem to be a no as well, unless the board has any other questions or comments about that.
Any of the lakes or
5, will proposed action affect surface or groundwater quality or quantity? And again, for examples, will proposed action require a discharge permit? Proposed action require use of a source of water that does not have accrual to serve proposed action? Will proposed action require water supply from wells with greater than 45 gallons per minute pumping capacity? Will proposed action, again, kind of jumping around a bit, but will proposed action cause any contamination of the water supply system? Will proposed action adversely affect groundwater? Liquid effluent will be conveyed off the site to facilities, and again, Mr. Richards indicated that's not even part of his application. Will proposed action use water in excess of 20,000 gallons per day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the questions here, Dan, is proposed action require the storage of petroleum or chemical products greater than 1,100 gallons. You have, what size, you get a fuel tank there for?
Fuel tank in the shop is 275.
Okay, so it's standard size tank then?
Yep.
Okay.
5 or 6 and line down. Proposed action will adversely affect groundwater. I just don't know how anybody can answer that question.
Is the water gonna be tested around it every once in a while?
Well, again, depending on how the board feels, we can, at one point, Dennis, did you bring in a water test on your house at one point?
Yep, they were tested, Neil Perry has all the results.
Okay, were those,
They all came back better than normal.
okay.
I've got 2 wells.
Did we ever need copies of those?
No, I don't believe you did.
Okay, no, you say 2 wells, is well servicing your house, I'm assuming, obviously.
Correct,
Where's the other well?
right by the shop.
Okay.
Should be indicated on your map.
I'm not complaining, I don't blame you.
Yeah, got it right there.
Something we could,
Do we know which way the aquifer runs on this?
Champlain flows north.
the operation of 120,000. Oh, no, usually.
You're just not the
I get, one of the questions was, could we ask that there be some periodic testing? Okay, that's a condition that can be attached if the board feels is appropriate.
Once a year, don't have a.
Or the board will do it.
Upon renewal of the permit.
Yeah,
Permit's only good for 1 year.
we'll probably go with the permit.
Now,
Like that.
So
What happens-
another permit.
what happens if you do find out that he's contaminated their water? Hence the bottle of water that I brought in that looked really nasty from Shaved Metal, and it's contaminated the wells to the residents around.
Well, to date, we haven't received any evidence that that's occurred, or that there's a problem with anybody's well that lives within, in the immediate area of this property. I mean, certainly if it's an issue, but there's been no evidence produced saying that that's happened.
If I might, Tom, I live just between, or I will live, not his property, between Mr. Richards' property and Mr. Savage's property. And I think what the concern is that the toxic levels are noted to be excessive. Is there any remedy at that point in time? Not saying that it's going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, all the well and good. No pun intended.
These are all, the permit we're setting for Mr. Richards, an annual permit. So this process is going to have to be taken every year. I mean, so if certainly there's problems that are occurring, the, future permit could certainly be in question or even be denied if we know there is a problem there. So it's something that's not going to be just carte blanche that's going to continue indefinitely. It is something that's going to be reviewed annually at least to make sure that everything is still in compliance with any conditions this board may set.
If you have an annual review and you find out that wells are contaminated, are we going to be supplying the neighbors with water with town money? That's happened in the past, that if we vote on this and contaminate the area, we could be paying for fresh water being delivered to these people.
I suppose anything could happen. I mean, I can't answer that question. But I guess all I can say is I know Mr. Richards has been there for quite a long period of time, and at least up to now, and this has been an application we've reviewed at least periodically, probably for at least 6 months, that I've been here, but maybe even for longer. And to date, I mean, there's always potential for anything to happen. I mean, I can't say nothing's ever happened, but to date, no one has brought in any well tests or whatever showing that there's been some contamination. This property has been used as, a metal yard, scrap wood yard for how many years?
Tom, but what is the intensity going to be? Is it going to be one time, it's going to be the same intensity, it's going to be 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the amount of activity. Because if it's, I would assume, although it's a bad word, that if it's X at this point in time, if it's 3 times the activity, then it's 3X.
I believe Dennis indicated, I don't want to speak for Dennis, but that the activity that's present is all he anticipates there being at this point.
Correct.
This was at the March meeting that we were present at, where they gave us a presentation as to what he planned on doing at the property, what he planned on having there, what he anticipated the scope of the project being. And I don't think he, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Dennis, but my recollection is you indicated that the scope of this project is really what you see now. I mean, you're not planning on doubling it, tripling it, quadrupling it.
No.
What-
This is
what's
my
shown-
designated area that I got on the
What's
map.
shown on this map is what you're proposing,
what I want.
and that's what exists now.
That's correct.
I don't think I understand, because as per Dennis Richards' letter on November 28th, he stated in 2002 he was visited by the DEC and they shut him down per violation because he didn't have a junkyard license. If he's running a business, pre-existing, it cannot be pre-existing if it's illegal. And he doesn't have a permit right now for a junkyard, so what are we talking about, his existing business now?
My understanding and what I remember occurring at the meeting back in March, even before then, at meetings, the town, at the time Dennis was visited by the DEC, did not have what's now known as the Town of Champlain Junk and Vehicle Storage Law. That was enacted in December of 2003. So prior to December of 2003, the town did not have any junk or vehicle storage law, for which Dennis would even have to apply for a license, which is what he's doing now. In speaking to Mr. Tatro, Mr. Tatro made the determination that this business has been in operation, not only obviously predating this law, but predating the zoning ordinance. He made the determination that it was a pre-existing non-conforming use, so it did not require any zoning approval. But it still did require getting the license, which essentially since the time Mr. Richard first was told he needed to get a license and since the enactment of the law, he's been in the process of trying to obtain. There were some initial maps he produced which weren't to scale. There were some other applications that were submitted that didn't contain all the information that is required by the law. So really probably since sometime in probably late 2004, or Mr. Tatro could probably give you the dates better than I can off the top of my head. But we've been in the process of having Mr. Richard comply with this law, which has culminated really in the meeting we had in March and the meeting we're having tonight.
Mr. Tetro wasn't even code officer at that time. He was going through the learning process. He didn't receive it until...
But he is a code enforcement officer now.
Yes,
And
but
he-
you
and he's
said
the one that
he
made that
did it
determination.
back then.
Mr. Tatro is the code enforcement officer now, and he's the one that made that determination. If somebody disagreed with that interpretation, they could have filed a application with the zoning board of appeals to request a review of his determination. And as far as I know, no one's done that to date.
Is there still time?
The,
Frankly, I don't think there probably is.
if I'm correct, the zoning law, the junkyard law,
You said no junk.
stated that he had to apply within 60 days after the law was enacted. And he did not. He applied 80-some days, I think 85, 86 days or something like that. So he did miss the filing date according to the new law. So that needs to be stated. The application did come in late.
I understand that.
Okay.
We're back on number 5 then. Proposed action affects surface or groundwater quality or quantity.
So yes or no, but is there a maybe?
If you feel yes, is there possibly to a small to moderate impact, potentially large impact? Can the impact be mitigated by project change? So it really isn't a maybe, it's either no or it's yes.
Yes.
And if it's yes, what do
To what
you
degree?
what do you feel the impact could be?
I have a question for Dennis. Could you review what you're going to do with the antifreeze and the oil?
I don't have
And
it.
so these cars won't have any of this?
No.
The gas tanks are going to be removed?
He's not crushing
I'm not-
cars.
I'm not applying
He's
for it.
crushing cars, there's not using cars at all.
It's scrap metal and
There is some
wood,
oil,
as I recall.
I think we agreed in March, maybe there was some oil in some of the appliances.
Well, you got washing machines that have oil, in them, you gotta take it out.
There's no cars going in this road, stuff like that, no small amount of oil.
There's no vehicles. The only vehicles that are there are vehicles that are imported into Canada. They're waiting for titles.
Yes.
And if you were to get involved with vehicles, that would be.
And the state gets involved in the vehicles.
Yeah, the state gets involved in vehicles, and again, as we talked a little bit back in March, there are very specific conditions that we can attach to what Dennis is gonna do there. He's saying no cars. If the board feels that they would want to approve this application or this license, they can condition it, saying, this is what he wants, this is specifically what he can have.
Is there a possibility of a liability for this township if we approve a permit and something happens to the ground water? The hypothetical,
There's liability to the town for any application, any item that the town may review. I mean, you're reviewing, sewer projects and other things. I mean, if something happens, like, it goes wrong with that, could the town be liable for something that, somebody's property or somebody that gets sick regarding that? Surely. The town would be liable for almost anything that they end up approving, reviewing, making decisions.
You're more in violation here than he is. Salt coming out of that pile back there, the wells around there. If you're looking for a violation, well, there's one right there.
you may be right.
No?
Yeah.
That's been brought up before, too.
That's something, I certainly can't sit here and say that, the town could not be liable for something. The town could be liable for almost anything that the town is involved in. The town is liable for knocking down a sign.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the sign is in the wrong place.
Probably in the
5
wrong
feet.
place, it's, so, almost any aspect that the town's involved in,
So,
they could be sued. Whether they're ultimately found liable, that's something that a jury or a judge would find. But to say you can be sued over something, you can be sued over anything.
I went and toured the property, and from what I saw in the area that there is scrap metal and there's not very much of it, and it's all up off the ground, as far as what I saw, it would not have any impact on the water because there is no fluids. I went down and I took a tour with Dennis, I called him, and I spent a good hour and a half down there with him, looking at and questioning, stuff. I even questioned about the oil that would come out of washing machines, and that's done in the garage.
I'm assuming, you use the word assume. When you're talking about groundwater contamination, you might think of rainwater on rusty metal, and the rust goes to the ground, or, that type of contamination. And that may not show up for a long time, if ever. Okay. There's already metal in the ground, we realize that. And excess amount of metal could affect water supply, I don't know.
Actually, it would affect children before it would affect adults.
I would hope a water test would tell us that before it affected anybody. I personally have that question about almost halfway down, number 5. The proposed action adversely affect groundwater. You can't say it won't, we don't know that it will, so it'd be at least small to moderate impact. I don't know.
Well, and again, I think if we require those wells, and in particular the well that's closest to the building, be tested annually, and we see the results. That's the well that's I'm assuming, and again, I don't know the way the aquifer runs, which I think you mentioned. But I'm assuming that would be the well that'd be contaminated before anybody else's would. At least something would show up in that well before anybody nearby. Again, I don't know where the aquifer runs or anything else, but that's an assumption. No, it's pretty close. But if the board is comfortable in saying under number 5, that'd be a yes, and small to moderate impact. That's the way the board's called.
If we do mark
Or
this, how does it affect the application?
Small to moderate impact really don't affect the application that much. It's potentially large impacts that really do affect the overall
If you
seafood.
was using 20,000 gallons of water to take care of this, I'd see you'd have a problem. Right? Runoff. It's using no water.
Well, I'm not concerned about the water he's using, I'm more concerned
Rain-
with where's it
rain-
going, that could be too, but I'm talking about rainwater that might wash something off the metal back into the ground. That could be like that.
Yeah, there's several different impacts to the example, no question about it. So I guess under number 5, again, just ask the board how they feel about that. If they feel yes, is small to moderate reasonable, do they feel it should be a no?
I would say yes, small and moderate, that's all.
That's right.
Does everybody feel the same way? John, you feel that's reasonable? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and small to moderate.
Small water, just the-
Which one, the adversely affect groundwater, right?
Yep. Number 6, will proposed action alter drainage flow or patterns or surface water runoff? And then examples, will the proposed action cause erosion, change floodwater flows, compatible with existing drainage patterns, allow development in designated floodway?
The land is fairly flat there. I don't see
Is there any drainage now that goes towards your neighbors?
No, it's all block.
There's no major deep ditches or,
So it seems the answer might be no.
well, that was my question, is there any major ditches now? And I assume, that I go with the word assume again, there's no intent to put any major ditching in there.
Wetlands all the way around, it's kind of hard to do.
So there's no drainage existing now?
No.
So does the full board feel comfortable with no for that one? Which is number 6.
I don't see a change, I mean, there's no extra ditching there, no future ditching.
Number 7, impact on air. Will proposed action affect air quality? And again, under examples, proposed action will induce 1,000 more vehicle trips in any given hour, result in the incineration of more than 1 ton of refuse per hour, increase the amount of land committed to industrial use, increase in the density of industrial development within existing industrial areas.
It's not gonna burn anything.
No, nothing being burned or anything. That's correct. How's the board feel about that then?
I feel it's no.
I have no knowledge of the group, so I,
Everybody agree? Number 8, impact on plants and animals. Will proposed action affect any threatened or endangered species? That's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Unless somebody knows something that's a problem. There's no, and not that you would, Dennis, but one of the questions is application of pesticide or herbicide more than twice a year. You don't apply any things like that. Board feel no would be appropriate. Number 9, will proposed action substantially affect non-threatened or endangered species?
the woodchucks may not want to hang around.
I don't know. I didn't know more.
They're not-
The board feel comfortable with no for that one. Impact on agricultural land resources. Will the proposed action affect agricultural land resources? Again, example, the proposed action sever, cross, or limit access to agricultural land. Would the activity excavator compel the soil profile of agricultural lands? Would it irreversibly convert more than 10 acres of agricultural land or located in an ag district, which Clark will learn it's not, more than 2.5 acres? Would the proposed action disrupt or prevent installation of agricultural land management systems or create a need for such measures?
The answer is maybe. We intend to go organic, and we already started the first transition to go organic with that chemical corn piece on Clark and Liggett Road. And if the water table or the water flow is as it appears to be, which is down the Clark Road running north through our property into the property that's in question. Now, there's no problem. The problem would be if it ever ran the other way and any pollutants were discharged it might affect our organic certification if and when we get it, which it's a balance, of course. You know, you have a right to use your land as you see fit, as long as it's within the law and the zoning and you're not hurting anybody else. And I certainly don't mind as long as it's not hurting anybody else. But I just don't know.
I understand the comment, that sounds like more of a groundwater issue, which I think you touched on. I don't know if any of these examples would really be affected unless things are differently, what's being proposed.
Animal one, right?
So, does everybody agree with the no? Is that my understanding?
I agree.
I believe that we're on number 11, impact on aesthetic resources. Will proposed action affect aesthetic resources? Proposed land uses or project components obviously different from, or in sharp contrast to current existing land use patterns, whether man-made or natural. And again, what we're talking about here is visibility issues or problems, I think, with the project components that result in elimination or significant screening of scenic views. I think the classic example of this kind of problem you're going to see is the wind farms that is coming up. And I know they're going to be required to do these visual EAF addendums. That's because obviously visually they're impacting what people can see and what, you know, what they would look out their backyard to see type of thing. Those are the examples you can probably see about that as far as aesthetics, where a view is being blocked or obstructed, or some kind of new building is being proposed that would change. Someone's ability to look at the backyard and see the mountains or whatever.
I think he's far enough off the road where
It would seem. Everybody okay with
I don't see
that?
it. I don't see that being a problem.
No, I wouldn't agree. I'm just using wind farms as an example, because that's going to be the classic example of what you're about. Number 12, impact on historic and archaeological resources. Will the proposed action impact any site or structure of historic, prehistoric, or archaeological importance?
how would you know that?
Well, if something existed now, I guess we would know. But historic could be, some kind of historic building, an old school, in the city of Plattsburgh, those historic monuments around, whether it be a burial ground, a cemetery, an old building. My old office used to be a cemetery in 1812 in Plattsburgh. You see those designations in certain areas where you know they exist. Are there fossils on that site that could be of importance? I suppose there could be, but certainly no evidence of that one way or the other. And again, one of the examples you see down below is any facility or site listed on the state or national register of historic places. And there's an example of that. Impact on open space and recreation, number 13. Will proposed action affect the quantity or quality of existing or future open spaces or recreational activities? For example, the permanent foreclosure of a future recreational opportunity, major reduction of an open space important to the community. That really going to example. So that's it. That sounds like it. Number 14, impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action impacts the exceptional or unique characteristics of a critical environmental area established pursuant to subdivision 6 NYCR for 617-14. Okay, there is no critical environmental area that's established in this immediate area. So I'd have to say the answer to that's probably no. And that's maybe a legal question, question anything else. There is no critical environmental area established in this area. Impact on transportation. Will there be an effect to existing transportation systems? Alteration, examples, alteration of present patterns of movement of people and or goods. Proposed action result in major traffic problems. truck per hour at the most. We seem to probably create a problem.
Will the town be able to, kind of widen the road there? Because coming around that corner, the trucks don't stay on their side. And there's no lines in the road. It's a narrow country road, and these trucks just take up the whole road. I've met quite a few of them. And they don't slow, they're not slow at all.
Dennis,
Would we line the road?
who are the people that, who are the truckers that you use or employ in transporting the metal or whatever? Is it your own trucks or somebody else's
No,
trucks?
they're hired trucks, they're not recyclable out of Montreal.
Those are the ones taking the material away. Bringing the material in could be most anybody.
Open to the public.
Yeah. There it could be from a pickup truck to a material.
Correct.
But his road itself is a private road, so you're talking about
She's talking
Like
about
road.
Liger
Like
Road.
road.
She-
the
she
town
is-
road where that intersects that road.
She is correct on that.
It's very narrow.
There's one sharp curve that could be
Two sharp,
striped.
two sharp curves.
One very sharp.
One by the railroad track and then the other one
Like
just
the round
coming off.
spot.
But they're not coming from the south, they're coming from the north. All the traffic that comes here is from the north. That's the only way they can get in my driveway, they can't get in my driveway from the south. There's a truck, a dump truck, and a tractor trailer.
They go up like road. They go up like road.
Smaller trucks, I don't know.
I thought Leggett Road ran east-west.
Impact on transportation is a problem. We would know when we come to renew the permit one year, wouldn't we?
Correct.
Most of it is traffic.
The west, and
You know, the west.
And you do any kind of decision we make on this.
Is there like
From the west.
Right the road.
That's what would help.
You can't guarantee it, obviously. The big trucks who come pick it up, we can monitor. We got some control of that. The people who come in with their pickup trucks with washing machines, they're gonna come whenever they come. But that doesn't seem to be the problem, it's the big trucks that are the problem.
He just stated the big trucks come from the north.
We need to decide.
I think that would be an item worth watching. It would be contingent upon if ever another permit was granted or not.
Okay. At this point, are we gonna say no at this point?
Well, can the town make a truck route for it or no?
What I know about truck-
Residential, the one person.
We can certainly ask Dennis to try, I mean, the small, as I mentioned, Mr. Clark, on the small truck, we don't much control of that, but the people bring in their washing machines and things like that, but we can certainly ask Dennis to, with the tractor trailers, or whatever, to try to have them come in the least, the route, which sounds like it's coming from the north, that would cause the least impact, or whatever that would be, that would have the least impact on people, the road, and frankly, be the safest, it sounds like. That
Well, that's what I'm looking at, is the safety,
we wouldn't establish a truck route, but we could at least, maybe a condition that Dennis advise the truckers that he deals with, that's the route they should follow, to at least minimize any problem. It sounds like that's kind of what's been going on anyways, or, I'm not saying everybody abides by that, but at least we should at least try to monitor that, and if we can condition it that way, and that's agreeable, maybe we deal with it that way.
They're going to Canada, that's the way they're going to go.
So everybody would say then, at this time would be no. Number 16, impact on energy. Will proposed action affect the community's sources of fuel or energy supply? Again, proposed action will cause a greater than 5% increase in the use of any form of energy in the municipality. Proposed action will require the creation or extension of an energy transmission or supply system to serve more than 50 single or two-family residences, etc.
So obviously, no.
Noise and odor impact. Will there be objectionable odors, noise, or vibration as a result of proposed action? And again, for examples, blasting within 1,500 feet of a hospital, school, or other sensitive facility. Odors will occur routinely, more than 1 per hour. Proposed action will reduce operating noise exceeding the local ambient noise levels for noise outside of structures. Proposed action will remove natural barriers that would act as a noise screen.
I don't know what local ambient noise levels are. You know, is there a meter by which, you know, I don't know that.
Yeah, it's, I guess it's probably just the usual noise level you would, I guess, expect in any community. And I think one thing you take into account is a rural community, so you have tractors, you have farm equipment, you have certain things. The noise levels, they're going to be louder than that. I mean, there may be times there might be, dumping of metal or loading of metal or whatever the case may be. I mean, how is the metal loaded in these trucks, Dennis? But basically with like some kind of
The clam.
yeah, cloth type.
Yeah, the block takes it from the ground.
And so it's gonna, you know, periodically as it's being loaded, there's gonna be some noise. I mean, he is a certain distance away from some of the neighbors. Maybe that distance is somewhat of a buffer for some of the noise, but there's gonna be, I mean, to say there's no noise is not realistic, but is it?
It's not any noisier than a tractor going down plowing here.
That's, I mean, I get, I mean, this isn't located right smack dab in the city of Plattsburgh either. It's
But
it's
they're
a
trained
rural
all
area.
night long. I mean, they're running 7 or 8 trains during the night.
Somebody say, answer no to that, then?
I would say no.
On the following page, 18, impact on public health. Will proposed action affect public health and safety? Excuse me. And for example, proposed action may cause a risk of explosion or release of hazardous substances in the event of an accident or upset conditions, maybe a chronic low-level discharge or emission. Proposed action may result in burial of hazardous waste in any form, storage facilities for 1 million or more gallons of liquefied natural gas or other flammable liquids. Proposed action may result in the excavation or other disturbance within 2,000 feet of a site used for the disposal of solid or hazardous waste. You know, those last two are applicable. And we're not, you know, of course, we're being told the application, there's no hazardous waste involved, and doesn't seem to be a risk of explosion in any way, shape, or form. I mean, that's no cars or gas or whatever that being involved. How's the board feel about that?
I would say no.
19, will the proposed action affect the character of the existing community, permanent population of the city, town, or village in which the project is located is likely to grow by more than 5%. The municipal budget for capital expenditures or operating services will increase by more than 5% per year as a result of the project. Proposed action will conflict with officially adopted plans or goals. Proposed action will cause a change in the density of land use, and then there's other examples. How's everybody feel about that?
Well, the only impact on the character of the community or neighborhood is additional traffic of trucks. That's what I'm thinking.
It sounds also like it's going to be about the same as it is now. What I'm saying. Granted, something we can monitor and check out. So everybody, the answer to that is no, or is that what I'm understanding?
I doubt that neighborhood's gonna change from agricultural to something else.
No. Then number 20, is there or is it likely to be public controversy related to potential adverse environmental impacts? That answer could possibly be yes, because obviously we've had people here complaining about certain aspects of it or concerns. It's not something that falls under impacts, it's just really an item that we answer as part of the review process.
How do we define public? 1 person, 2 people, or 20?
Anybody that speaks for the public?
We've had a number of people, I think, over the meetings that we've held. I mean, probably 3, 4. In the east that have said things as that public controversy. I think if anybody speaks, 1 person speaks, technically, I think it's public controversy. Again, it's not something that falls under the impact level, it's something that just has to be checked as part of the review.
Obviously, there is some concern in the neighborhood of controversy.
I would say yes.
We can check it. Again, it's not a level where we have to do a small model. We go on to part 3, basically then we have to evaluate the importance of the impact. Again, in reviewing all the items we reviewed this evening, there was only one item that came under the small to moderate impact, and that was the impact on the groundwater. There were no potentially large impacts. The visual EAF addendum, I don't believe is necessary because we didn't identify any issues with that. We don't need to complete that. So going then back to the very first page of the full environmental assessment form, since there were no large or potentially large environmental impacts identified, then I believe a motion can be made by the board to have a negative declaration issued for this project. By negative declaration, just indicating that we have not identified any large, potentially large environmental impacts to this project.
I'll make that motion. If there have been no significant environmental impacts, which is obvious because we only checked one. Don't even bother.
I'll second that motion.
So we'll go vote on it.
Yes.
The motion is to accept. We do not have a large or, what do you call it?
Significant.
Yeah, any large, potentially large, or significant environmental impact. So a negative declaration for this project.
Is there any questions? Roll call vote. Craig? John?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Jules?
Yes.
And yes for myself. And you got the 1%.
We then completed seeker and complied with its requirements.
Do we need, I assume at our next meeting we need to vote on this?
But that's the other issue, because at the last meeting in September, we received the consent of Mr. Richard to March meeting, I'm sorry, ahead of myself. The March meeting, we received Mr. Richard's approval to extend it to tonight's meeting because of the fact we wanted to get a long-form environmental impact statement completed, which they did.
His attorney was not here the last month, was it?
I don't think, Dennis, you
We're
were
on
here.
vacation.
You were here in April, right?
I was here, but they
We didn't have the long form completed at that time.
No.
You didn't have your section filled out.
Right. So again, depending how the board feels tonight, under the law, technically you have 45 days from the public hearing. That was extended by Mr. Richard. If the board feels it might want additional time, we'd have to give Mr. Richard's consent to get that, maybe an additional 45 days or whatever. I mean, I'm not speaking for the board, I'm just throwing that out there as an issue, as a point of discussion, I suppose.
I feel comfortable voting. I have enough information to vote and tell you right now.
Do we have the insurance?
Do we,
Somebody had a question about the insurance. Mickey, did Mr.
I believe in March, the subject about the insurance was that when the application is complete before the permit is issued, he would supply us with the appropriate insurance. He did supply us with a quote for the insurance that is required, but an actual policy, no, I don't have.
do we need to know the vote on the variances that he's asking for? Or only after it's granted?
The only
He's asking for 3 that I know of, okay?
Right. The only, my point is, we talked about a lot of things at that March meeting. Not only some of the items, Dennis gave us a pretty in-depth outline of what was going to be conducted at the property. We talked about a lot of concerns that the board had around certain issues, some of the setbacks, the wetlands, what was going to be stored there. We've identified some other issues tonight. I think just going through the seeker. I would probably suggest to the board that if Mr. Richard is willing to extend the approval period of time, say for additional 45 days, that we take that opportunity to at least review our notes, review the minutes of that meeting in March, to make sure if whatever decision we make, we've got everything in there that we need. If we feel it needs to be conditioned, that we have all the conditions in there that we would want. I think that's probably a prudent step, but again, we would have to get Dennis's consent for that extension of time.
been going on for 2 years.
That's just my thought, and I'm not trying to delay this thing further.
You're asking about like the conditions, is that what you're-
Well, I'm assuming, only from what I remember, there was 3 conditions that I think your lawyer spoke to us about. One, we had to waive the application deadline, you were past the 60 days, he asked us to waiver that. Setback requirements from your neighbors, that needs a waiver. I believe.
Correct. It was wetlands setback, the setbacks from neighbors and fencing. Those are the 3 things,
Fencing.
according to my notes.
Then we may have, if the application is approved, we may want that water testing in that. I don't know, that needs to be a waiver, but that needs to be a condition of.
Yeah, there, in the regulations, it clearly indicates that the board can attach reasonable conditions to any approvals, any renewals, whatever is involved, that you have that ability to attach conditions to that.
That has to be done at the time if the application is approved.
That is
You
correct.
can't do it later.
You can't do it after the fact.
Yes.
I already listed some conditions that I would put on, inspected yearly by our code inspector, that the water be tested yearly, no automobiles would be involved in the, whatever he's doing, and advise the people that are carting his material out to go to the west and not face the road and not the other direction.
Okay.
Maybe other board members would add more to it.
No, that's pretty much like our,
I think Tom is probably right, though. We need to review all these, not just the variances that Mr. Richards is asking for, but the conditions, if the application is approved, the conditions that we wish to set.
Yeah.
We need those in writing. Am I correct?
You know, I think it's always a good idea if Mr. Richard, again, is willing to give you the time to review everything, so a written decision can be adopted by the board, including all the conditions that the board feels is appropriate, rather than trying to research our memories tonight. That's something we have some time to be able to do.
well,
It's just a suggestion.
don't we have to do like a yes or no vote to see if it passes first, correct?
So it says actually you have, within 45 days of the public hearing, the town board shall render a decision to approve the conditions or disapprove. That's something that technically you could do at next month's meeting if you had no time to do
The
that.
conditions need to be.
As part of that decision.
The conditions and the variances need to be part of the whole package, so to speak.
Correct.
It has to be done at a public meeting.
Certainly.
But it says within 45 days of said hearing, it doesn't have to necessarily be a public hearing.
I don't think it needs to be 45 days.
Because the March meeting was a public hearing, tonight's a public hearing.
Our next meeting is roughly 30 days, I believe, so.
It could be done at that time.
But first of all, does he want to extend it?
But we'd have to get Dennis's approval to do that, or if he doesn't.
Your the 4 things that you're asking, I don't have a problem with that, but, I mean, it's lingering and lingering. If you feel that's what you need to do, well, that's what we'll do.
I believe our meeting is on June 13th.
Dennis, do we have your permission or
Sure.
your consent to adjourn it to that date, to render a decision that evening on your
That's fine.
application?
That's fine.
You will review with the board the things that we spoke of. And the passage of it, if it is passed, will have to reflect those variances and conditions.
Correct.
Can I ask a
Should we
question?
write our comments down and give them, send them off?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what my next question was, but I think we've addressed it.
We'll be in contact for sure.
Yeah, maybe something that, you
But
know,
you
schedule a
got-
work session or something.
Right.
Between now and then, review.
You've got 7 issues, correct?
I've got 4.
You got 3 variances and 4 issues that you want to put in there when you release a permit. You got 3 different, you got 7. You got 7 altogether.
I believe it was, but like.
We talked about other things about testing the water and
Right.
annually and things like that, Dennis, too, which probably isn't part of those other 4, but, I mean, suffice to say, there are, I think, several conditions we talked about tonight, in addition to the three variances that are going, or the four other items.
I just don't wanna come back into the meeting and have another one question, to anything different. We ironed out quite a bit.
We talked a lot in March too, and that's one of the things too. We talked about hours of operation. We
Exactly.
talked about things like that. I mean,
Well, that's another thing, the hours of operation will probably be in the conditions.
yeah. I mean, so I don't want to say I'm limited to the 7 things because we talked about a lot of things at that meeting in March that, again, we need to probably review some of the minutes from that meeting, just refresh our recollection in preparing whatever decisional document or decision we make.
So in the meantime, what we'll do is we'll discuss if it passes, these will be the conditions, and if it's for development.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
In the junkyard zoning law, Article B, Section 2, the very last paragraph, it says any person who creates a junkyard after the law or whose existing junkyard expires has to comply by the local law. So even if you had a pre-existing business there, now that it's expired, it's no longer, he needs to comply with our junkyard law.
It would only expire if the use discontinued for more than 1 year. That's how it would expire. It doesn't expire because he doesn't have a license. He's been going through the license process ever since the town adopted this, albeit maybe it took us some time to file the application and give us all the information we needed to get to this point tonight. But in the zoning ordinance, it talks about how pre-existing non-conforming uses end and or terminate. And it would have to be discontinued for a period of 1 year. And
When you stop.
And that again, as part of the discussion that we had with Mr. Tatro, it's not in March prior to previous meetings about this, I think the determination was that his operation didn't stop for that period of time.
So he went against the DEC and he kept going.
The DEC made him clean up and then said he had to get a license. And at the point in time the DEC told him to get a license, the town didn't have a law in effect that required a license.
No, they said no junkyards, and no scrap metal, it said in that before the December one, it did say on there, no junkyards, no scrap metal, before this was put in under 233.
I did understand that.
There was a zoning thing in there that said no junkyards, and it said no scrap metal yards for the town of Champlain, period, before we put this in as December 2003, before we put in all the different parts to it. There was none.
What law was it? What was that law?
That was before the
Before zoning.
2003. It's in the other zoning law.
For the zoning law, but he's
Yeah.
saying that again, the interpretation was made that he was in existence before zoning. Zoning is the first law that said you couldn't have a junkyard or scrap metal yard or anything else. If you exist prior to the adoption of that zoning ordinance, you're pre-existing non-conforming use.
But how can you be pre-existing when he wasn't before? I don't understand that part.
DEC didn't require him to do anything. He was legal because there was no law in the town saying he couldn't do that.
So we can do whatever we want as long as.
Well, you couldn't prior to zoning. Certainly there were some building code issues that you had to comply with, but essentially, prior to zoning, if you wanted to put a automobile repair shop next to your house, I don't know the reason why you couldn't, other than you have to get the state licenses to do it. If you want to put a junkyard next to your house, technically you probably could. I mean, what is out there at that time pre-zoning that says you couldn't do that? Other than the fact that you didn't want to probably, do something that would injure your value of your property, or your neighbor's property, or anything else. But if there's no zoning in a town that says you can't do certain things, then you are free to do what you want, essentially, as long as there's no other state laws or building codes that are being violated. And you see examples of pre-existing non-conforming uses all over the place. I mean, Wyatt Harris, you wouldn't build Wyatt Harris in the middle of the village of Rouse's Point now. You wouldn't. You couldn't. There'd be no way. But it's a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Is there any other questions for Tom? From anyone, audience or board members? Julie, why are you staying on the agenda? Did I hit everything?
The only other thing, I don't know if you need a formal motion to basically table the decision of his application to the June meeting. And that we've received Dennis's consent to do that.
I have no problem doing that.
That might be appropriate.
I make a motion that we postpone this to the next meeting with the addition of Dennis's permission.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. June meeting, some decision will have to be made on this issue. We will be talking with our attorney. Plan of action. If there's nothing else, I need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned.